Hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're going to be talking all about energy medicine and detoxification, a ton of different subjects because my guest today is very knowledgeable and I really want to pick her brains while I have her on the podcast today. So my guest is Dr. Linda Lancaster, who is an energy medicine physician. In 1987, she founded Light Harmonics Institute, an energy medicine clinic and education center based in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Her training includes Ayurveda, yoga, medical radiesthesia, radionics, subtle energy healing, counseling, nutrition, herbal medicine, and detoxification methods. Her life-changing health and cleansing programs have been offered to her patients and their families for nearly 40 years now. So I'm very excited to chat with you today, Linda, to discuss some of the subjects in your new book, Harmonic Healing, which you kindly sent me a copy of before today's recording. And I've been digging into it. I've been through it multiple times, honestly, because it's so interesting. But I always start off by asking my guests a bit about how they got into doing what you do in the first place.
Thank you very much. So I will start by saying I was a teenager growing up, and I had colitis. I didn't know what that was at that time, but I just knew I was in a lot of pain and a lot of gas, and I couldn't digest anything nor my life at that time. So I searched and searched, and I found yoga first, by the way, and but the yoga was just not enough. And I realized food had a lot to do with it, so I had to change my diet. And then I found out that I had parasites. I had an amoeba in my system. And once that cleared up, and I continued on the lifestyle of good food, as well as understanding what my environment was and how to live within my environment. So I continued with yoga till this day, and I was really pushed into becoming a physician because I realized that all my fellow yogis were sick too, and I just had to find out what to do with it. But being a natural person, always finding the holistic method, I studied homeopathy, I studied natural healing, hands-on healing, all of that. So I began to learn that we have more than a physical body. We have an etheric body. And that etheric body is where energies come in and then begin to cause dis-ease.
Amazing. Yeah, you've got a ton of different modalities and methods in your tool belt, which I love and really inspiring. I aim to be like you in the next few decades. And I find that yoga for a lot of people is like the gateway into meditation and mindfulness. So I went there as well. So I'm a big fan of yoga. And I wanted to ask to start off with the term etheric energy. I really honestly hadn't heard about that before you mentioned it with your practice. But how does that differ between other kind of energy definitions that we hear about in terms of the conventional medical world with ATP or adenosine triphosphate versus the Eastern medicine? They sometimes describe it as chi or ki. How does etheric energy kind of go with all of these other things?
Yeah, well, etheric energy is everywhere because it is the space, first of all. But the etheric energy is what integrates with our physical body. Our physical body is not alive without ether, without the etheric force field. So we have a physical body, and then we have an energy field, which they call chi or ki. However, how I look at it is, we have a physical body that is the etheric and has an etheric double, and they are connected, because if that ether comes apart, then separates, then we no longer have the life force. So I look at ether as being the life force. It is the first element in Ayurveda. So if we study yoga as well, you'll head towards understanding Ayurveda. And the first element is ether. Then it goes into air, and then it goes into fire, and then water, and then earth. So we have 5 elements. But the ether is actually the energy that creation. And it is the space in all things. So this is what we call the etheric force field. It's very much explained in anthroposophical medicine as well, because Rudolf Steiner talked about the etheric force field where all life comes from. So a plant has a physical component, but it also has an ether field. That's why eating plants are so important, because we need to feed our ether. We need to feed our etheric field. So it's a very energy medicine usage of words, or understanding is this ether that is everywhere, you know. It's life force. Nothing is alive without ether.
And what are some signs that someone might have issues with low etheric energy? Is that just what we think of as fatigue, or are there other things?
Exactly. So we have a physical body and an etheric body. The ether is really the reserve body, but it integrates. It's actually penetrating light that comes in as ether into our physical form. And it cannot be seen. Well, I shouldn't say that, because people can see those etheric fields. But when we just look at each other, oh, there's just a physical body here. But we are more than a physical body. That we've started to understand, that the ether is the most important element to nourish. So how do we nourish ether? We nourish ether through food. Food that's imbibed with etheric energy, or imbibed with energy. So why does some food not do that and others do? It's just basically organic or not. So because when we're looking at synthetic chemicals or pesticides or anything that interferes with the force field, yes, anything that's processed changes that field. That's why I try to explain to people, please eat good organic food, because we're not going to stay well unless we do that.
And what about with the whole Ayurvedic medicine and also those into yoga? A lot of them are on vegan and plant-based diets. So with the whole animal protein side of things, I'm a big fan of high quality animal protein if it's grass-fed and if it works for your digestion and things like that. But what are your thoughts? Is it, again, just coming back to the quality?
It gets back to the quality, yes. If you choose to be a vegan, then you're a vegan, but let it be filled with lots of vegetables that has an electromagnetic field. I'm not against eating meat, but if you're going to eat meat, please eat grass-fed. Eat meat that's not contaminated. But we don't have to have meat to stay healthy. That's, I feel, is a choice. And according to the constitution of the person, somebody who's digging ditches have a bit of a problem just surviving on plant diet. Okay, because
sometimes you need that build, that anabolic.
Yeah, and some people are more constitutionally, they've grown up for generations upon generations. I mean, if you're living up in the high levels of Alaska or Siberia, there aren't very many plants. You have to eat the meat, but then so you have to eat the high levels of protein to survive. So you look at your environment again, see how you're. What are your needs? Do you sit sedentary at a desk, you know, or do you're working out and you know, running marathons? So we have to look at it. There's no one diet for all, and I talk about that in my book. Actually, is that most important, good quality. Second, balance your diet. Not just meat or not just vegetables. If you're going to be a vegetarian, you need a lot of vegetables, but also you need the grains and the beans, because that's where we're going to get our protein. Especially being vegan, you're not going to have dairy as well. So I pretty much have balanced menus on both sides of the fence, and I don't judge anyone who does one thing or another. I think it's how we look at the food and also how we bless it and how we're imbibing nature. So we're imbibing God.
Definitely.
Nature is God.
Yeah, I love how balanced your approach is, because you've been in the industry for how many decades, and you've obviously been around for the different fads and trends that come and go. So it's very reassuring to know that it all comes back to balance, do what works for you, eat seasonally, eat locally, eat good quality food, don't eat too much food in general. So yeah, happy to hear that.
And be vegetable forward.
Yes. I'm
Yes.
definitely with you.
And the reason why, can I ask?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. The reason why I am so much vegetable forward, that's one of the most important parts of any choice in diet, is because the plant has an etheric field, and that etheric field, it emanates from minerals. Our most important nutrients are minerals, because in the mineralization is where we have the electromagnetic energy. So I talk a lot about that.
And I do a lot of mineral testing with my clients with HGMA, her tissue mineral analysis, and a lot of people are very mineral deficient. So, and they're maybe supplementing, but because the soil is so depleted these days, because of things like glyphosate and heavy metals, and once the plant is harvested, it starts to be depleted. So we're shipping things from halfway across the world. So I agree with eating locally. I know it's a big emphasis for you as well.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And getting back to the etheric energy as well, you've mentioned Ayurvedic medicine a couple of times and how you're passionate about that. How does the chakra system tie into all of this, if it does at all?
Well, of course it does, because that's how the etheric force field gets into us, is through the chakras, which are vortexes of energy. We talk about 7 chakras. We have more than that, but we can talk about it being the adrenal glands, the reproductive organs, the testes, and the ovarian energy. These are chakras. So the sacral chakra is where our hormones come in. That's how it plays out. So if we're going to have good hormones, our sacral chakra needs to flow. So we have the base chakra, which is the adrenal glands. Then we have the reproductive organs. Then we have the pancreas. And in the solar plexus, it's pancreas. I'm talking about endocrine glands that actually produce hormones. You know, the endocrine gland, the pancreas, actually produces insulin. So we have our heart, with our heart chakra, which is the thymus gland. We have our throat chakra, which is thyroid. We have the ajna chakra, which is the pituitary gland. We have the crown chakra, which is the pineal gland. The thing that I emphasize is that we can't just focus on one endocrine gland. We may have a low thyroid causing problems in the reproductive area. However, we have the thyroid is not really in charge, because the thyroid gets messages from the pituitary gland and from the adrenal gland. Mm-hmm. So everybody has to talk to each other. It's like a car. We have to take care of our car by giving it good fuel, by changing the oil filter, and by balancing the spark plugs, by making sure our spark plugs are all talking to each other. Just one spark plug out will throw the whole mess out. And the main glands to pay attention to is the endocrine glands is the adrenals and the pituitary. Those are the ones that send the messages. Those are master glands. We call them master glands. So when someone is in stress or overworked and so forth, and our adrenal glands get exhausted, the next gland that starts to try to take over and then goes out of balance is the thyroid. And then we have the whole problems of that. So ether comes in to our endocrine vortexes of energy, and that's how it feeds us.
And they'll have a knock-on effect on each other. So yeah, it's
the
very
chakras
conventional.
the chakras are very important because they are the gateways. Then they are connected to the endocrine glands, and the endocrine glands then produce the hormones, and that's how the whole story begins of being human.
And there are even like functional or holistic practitioners who just hyper focus on the adrenals or the guts, and they don't take this holistic approach. So they're kind of doing what allopathic or conventional doctors do, where they send you to one place for one issue, another specialist for another issue, and nobody's looking and putting the puzzle pieces together. So
yeah, the speciality of medicine.
Correct.
Yeah, I like to take a holistic approach. Yes.
And what about, because I know that there's colors associated with the chakra systems. So for example, the sacral chakra is orange, I think, if I remember correctly. Do you feel like increasing those types of colorful foods helps in any way?
Sure. I think we should have a variety of, a rainbow of food, of course. But in balancing, and there are ways of using color on the endocrine system and so you could use orange, yes. But you can use indigo for when there's shock on the head. The colors are very, very important. Even the homeopathic remedies are actually color. And according to the potency, it changes color. So that's a whole nother world. We can probably speak for hours upon that. I do that in my classes.
Could you touch on because I've had some people who do use homeopathy as part of their practice, but I don't think we've had like a proper definition as to what it is. So what is homeopathy and how could it be helpful?
Now, wait a minute. You're in London?
Manchester.
Oh, well, Manchester. Yeah. Okay. But you are in England. Yes. England is very, very ahead in homeopathy, for sure.
And I'm really interested in it. And the college that I studied at do offer some homeopathy classes, but I've never had any experience of it. So I would love to hear your opinion.
Oh, so wonderful. I'm so excited. Homeopathy, it would be my #1 choice if I had no other modality.
Really? Amazing.
Because it is medicine that is non-toxic and works. So let's go to homeopathy. Homeopathy works on the principle of likes cure likes. So, okay. So let's take a red onion. Okay, and we cut the onion. What happens? Eyes tear, burn and all of that. Now, if we potentize, by potentize, I mean, take that onion and make it into, and let it sit in water and then dilute it until the substance isn't there, but the energy of it is. Those little pellets of onion will actually, if you have hay fever symptoms, sort of, tearing, burning, you can take that potency and it will change. Those symptoms will go away. So homeopathy works on symptomology, but we have what I call a Bible, a materia medica, of all of the homeopathy. I'm at my desk, so like materia medica. In materia medica, we have hundreds and hundreds of homeopathic remedies that have been proven. The law of proving, which I will explain in a minute, will tell you what each substance, whether it be mineral, sputum, milk even, herbs, all of these things have been proven on humans to cause a certain symptom or many symptoms according to what the person has told the person, the tester. And there are lots and lots of symptoms of different homeopathic remedies. And it's been proven. The proving is you take the remedy, and you start to have symptoms because you're taking the remedy so much. They never bring it to the point very, very sick, but headaches will be in there, burning eyes, can't breathe, congestion. All of these remedies have been proven on people through these minute doses or diluted doses of these different substances. And so homeopathy works very quickly if we've got the right remedy. And the right remedy is listening to the patient. So I use homeopathy. It's just I eat, drink, and sleep homeopathy these days with all the symptoms that are around the world. And so there are protocols for homeopathy that will help with colds and flus and hormonal problems. Amen. Really hormonal. Because what does homeopathy do? Homeopathy stimulates the vital force to heal itself. It's not like taking an aspirin, the headache goes away. No, we're matching the symptoms of the headache. Is the headache here? Is the headache here? This is digestive. This is liver. And so we start to say, oh, that remedy, that makes sense. Let's give them Nux vomica, for instance. Nux vomica in its own is just like is actually a poison if you took it in its full strength. But it's not, because we're diluting it to such a degree that the pharmacist can't even tell there's anything in it except energy. So of course that would be my choice in medicine, because I'm an energy practitioner. Wow. So with the addition of homeopathy, I'm able to handle a lot more than just an herb. And I shouldn't say just an herb, because the herbs are powerful. I love the herbs. I love the herbs. I love homeopathy. I love good diet. I love good exercising, stretching, meditation. This is lifestyle. And there are methods to cleaning the liver. Why liver? Because that's our biggest detoxifying organ.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about your approach to kind of restoring energy systems, but what are some of the things that can, so obviously homeopathics and yoga and breathing and nature can all improve our etheric energy. What are some of the other things that can negatively impact? There are a few that I want to specifically talk about that were in your book. Firstly, the umbrella of parasites. So usually when we think of parasites, we think of things like Blastocystis hominis and Dientomoeba, like the common kind of ones that are tested on stool tests. But under the umbrella, you include things like viruses, worms, fungi, and bacteria as well. So yes. Could you talk a little bit about the common things that you see, and maybe some examples of how you've related them to the 5 elements as well in the Chinese medicine?
Very good.
That was a big question. You just go for it. You just start talking.
It's just like the homeopathy. I didn't expect to give a homeopathic lecture, and I was like, oh, homeopathy, there's so much to say. And there's so much to say in parasites as well.
One of my favorite subjects.
Oh, good.
Like the past few months, like pretty much every episode has referenced parasites, because I've been deep into the research and I've been doing parasite cleansing on myself, and it's literally changed my life.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, good for you. So I look at it as 5 categories of parasites. Yes, worms. Yes, fungus. Yes, bacteria. Yes, microscopic, like the amoeba, and viruses. I consider them all parasites. Before we go into that, we need to understand that the reason why we get parasites is because we get out of balance. Okay, if our electromagnetic field or the etheric force field is strong, then we don't get those parasites, because it just doesn't want to be living in you. So we'll get into the fact that we have to clear heavy metals and radiation to balance the electromagnetic field of our body, which is really our etheric field as well. So these parasites come in because we're out of balance. We'll start with worms. Worms are connected to the earth element. Okay. In fact, in Ayurveda, this is the earth finger. So I think that's how I remember, because it's easy to remember.
It's like a little worm.
Like a little worm, yeah. And this is the earth finger. Okay, so worms. Worms, like from the soil, they're worms, you could see them. We get roundworms, we get pinworms. Kids get pinworms all the time. They're passing it to each other. Yeah, so that's worms. Then we have fungus. Fungus is connected to the water element and this is the water finger. That's why we wear, sentimental rings on this water finger. And these fungus or these fungi usually comes from, in past, antibiotics, birth control pills. Big deal with birth control pills and fungus. Too much sugar, too much, and so much fermentation, and that it just grows and grows and grows. So that's fungus.
That would make sense in terms of the Ayurvedic or Chinese medicine. They say like excessive dampness. So that kind of ties into it.
Right. If it's truth, we should be able to integrate it into every kind of philosophy. So that is truth. It's the dampness. Then we have this is our fire finger. Our middle finger is our fire finger, and fire you associate with bacteria. Bacteria can go into infection. It can fire up, it'd be very, very inflammatory, full of infection. And that happens, again, for many reasons. There's many reasons for bacteria. And treatment for that, I like using homeopathy very much. And there are homeopathic remedies that deal with infection, that deal with fire, overheat, that fever, that's bacteria. Then we have microscopic parasites. I separate it very much from worms. This is the air finger. I separate it from worms because this you can see and this you can't. And those are the hard ones to find, is the ones you can't. We have a lot of problem in America with Lyme disease. And
yeah. I got it.
Oh, no.
I got it in the US as well.
Did? Oh my goodness. Mm-hmm. Those little ticks, they get to you.
And I think mine was from a mosquito, honestly, really? in New York City.
Okay, yeah. Well, that has been known. So that is the spirochete. The spirochete is connected to syphilis, actually. The spirochete is really from syphilis, or the syphilis family. And so it's really hard to get rid of because it's so microscopic. You might think it's gone, but then there's just a little area and it comes back again. So the only way to deal with Lyme is maintenance. And if you change your lifestyle and you clear that big, massive spirochete that first came, you can keep it under control. We see it all the time. Then we have viruses. We all have viruses. Okay, we've been injected with viruses. We've had flus. It's a subject that's very difficult to talk about these days because everybody's mind is on virus. And the way we deal with viruses is becoming strong and overcoming the viruses and knowing that you can heal it. And then the virus will calm down. Obviously, we're in a contagious world right now, as a lot of people are talking about that. But if we can keep our electromagnetic balance normalized, we won't have that problem, because it's contagious because we have become a good host for it. And part of it is because of fear.
So there are certain emotions also connected with these elements, and that might make you more prone to getting viruses if you're a fearful person.
I like to call it the psychoimmune system. Yeah. How do we strengthen our immune system? Nature, positivity, good thoughts, and being careful when we're in an environment that has a lot of viruses happening. Viruses are information there to help us. It's connected to the ether. So now we realize that viruses are really very spiritual, and they're giving us spiritual information. So how do we connect with that? In the case of worms, this is the earth. We use herbs. detoxification herbs. That's what cleanses worms. In the case of fungus and the water element, we use, we have to get away from the idea is I want. You know, when somebody has a lot of candida, all they want is sugar. They can't stop eating sugar. And so we need to balance that, and that's change your diet. Candida, you have to change the diet, otherwise it'll stay there. And then there are good formulas to use for candida. In the case of bacteria, it's usually, those are flare-ups. And dealing with bacteria, hopefully not having to go to the point of antibiotics, because then you've got a double thing going on. And then we have the microscopic, which we have oxygenating herbs to work with the Lyme or the spirochetes or the amoeba. So, and then again, the viruses are there, and if we only embraced it and realized it's trying to help us to rise above it all, then we're going to get ahead of this game.
Mm-hmm. For example, with something like Epstein-Barr virus, there's tons of people just chasing the virus, trying to kill it off, which is impossible. And the goal should be to strengthen the immune system and the etheric field so that it can keep the virus in check just on its own.
Correct.
And you mentioned before about the connection with environmental toxins and radiation. What is the order of approach? Like, when do you go after those things, or do you go after the parasites, or the
same time?
Yeah,
the same time.
Okay.
Because we have to change the field that we're working in. So we're working in this field of maybe full of heavy metals. Now that creates a slow activity at the cellular level. So if that's going on, how do we really find balance? We can't. So as you know, you've read my book, and I use therapeutic baths to deal with heavy metals, chemicals, and radiation. And so we neutralize the heavy metals. We can do it also with homeopathy. If we know we have high levels of aluminum, for instance, which I find aluminum the worst of all. And it's not just from using aluminum pans or aluminum pots. It's in the environment. There are nanoparticles of aluminum in our environment. And those nanoparticles come into our cells and cause a slowing of the cells. So a cell has an acid balance or electrical flow. Acid is electrical. It's a very high moving. Then we have a magnetic flow or alkaline. Not alkaline in the what we call in the fluids in our body, but alkaline like a battery. So we have all these little batteries in our body, and those are our cells. And it's balanced with electrical, with acid and alkaline, just like you take a battery. So how do we balance it so we keep the integrity of the cell? If it goes too far one way, it gets slow, and if it goes too far the other way, it gets inflammatory. Radiation is inflammatory. It's a high acid field. It's a lot of movement and electricity, and that's why we feel it in our nerves. If you're near a power center or cell towers, you can feel it. All of a sudden you feel like a buzz. At least I do.
The sensitive souls can feel like Bluetooth and 5G, all of these new.
Everywhere. You know. I recommend that people hardwire their computers and not just use Wi-Fi. If we can avoid as much as possible, it's a good thing. Otherwise, we can also, and besides that, we need to take sea salt and baking soda baths. Pound of sea salt, pound of baking soda. Very simple method of putting it in the bath for half an hour. You soak in the bath for half an hour. It doesn't have to be so hot it burns you, but enough that the temperature changes. So you get into a nice hot bath, which I know is very, very good for you Brits. Love your baths.
Especially me. And I
Yeah.
was used to just doing regular Epsom salt baths because I knew of the benefits of like the sweating and the magnesium, but I have been doing the therapeutic baths and I really noticed a big difference. So you were the only person that I heard talking about things like radiation before.
Yeah, because if you do a sea salt and baking soda bath a couple of times a week, you can mitigate most of the radiation on a regular basis. And people say, well, how long do I have to do these baths? Well, I think you have to keep doing them because
As long as you're on in this toxic
planet.
world,
Yeah, yeah. Unless, and the baths will not be the whole story if we have very strong electromagnetic field around our house. So we have to watch where we're living also. Sort of, you know, when you go these days, even when you go into New York City, it's a strong electromagnetic field. So we're subtle energy. It's not just our physical body. We have these energy fields, and that's what upsets the etheric energy, is these hidden, unseen contaminants. So I'm trying to give solutions to help people mitigate it so we can survive as a human race.
And as well as the therapeutic baths, are there any other tips that you have for when we travel? So over the past year, with everything that's been going on, people are more desperate than ever to travel and go on vacation or holidays, but there is obviously risk with radiation, and things can be very stressful to the body with changing time zones on the circadian rhythm and all of that. So is there anything else or any other tips that you have for healthy travel?
Well, you know, walking barefoot, grounding, you know, earthing, they call it earthing, will help to rebalance your electromagnetic field. Yeah. So that helps. The salt and soda baths helps. Seaweed helps enormously with radiation. Cilantro helps enormously with heavy metals. But that seaweed is, so you can, I bring like a package of dulse, and I eat dulse on my trips. And but at the end of the day, it's our meditation and our connection beyond our atmosphere up to the divine that actually strengthens our electromagnetic field. That's what strengthens the web, because we believe who we are. And I believe that we are God within. And so if we can trust nature to heal us, I do a lot of tree hugging. If you look at my Instagram, you'll see me hugging a tree, because that's what energizes me. And if you try it, it will do it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people think it's like a very woo-woo hippie thing, but it really does work, and everyone always feels better after doing it. You can't say that that's not true.
We can't put a description on it. We just do it because we believe and love nature. So we walk in awe of nature. I do. I mean, that's what keeps me going, and it has for, my whole life.
Same here, especially with the lockdowns in the UK and us being cooped up inside all the time. I just feel like so tired, and my mood isn't great when I'm not getting outside. So that is one of the
Are you able to
things.
leave your house?
Yeah, we can leave the house, but at the start of it, we could only go out like once a day to go for a walk, and then we weren't meant to do any other form of exercise or going outside, which was crazy.
I think it's hard on the lockdowns. It's very hard living in a city. Mm-hmm. That is the biggest issue here. I'm lucky, and I work in New York City, but I haven't worked in New York City this whole year. Mm-hmm. Where I live is pretty much in nature. So.
And what about those people who, because I'm the same as you, who get overwhelmed with the energies of big cities? Like, I'll happily go to London or New York, but for a weekend, and then it's just too much. I could never live somewhere like that. But what about those people who are drawn to live in those types of energies? What's going on with that?
Well, I'm originally a New Yorker. Probably hear my
yes.
New York accent. Actually, Brooklyn, New York. So what I say is, put on music and dance. because the music creates rhythm and it helps our emotional field. You know, rescue remedy, we need rescue remedy. We need vitamin D because you're not getting in the sun. Need vitamin C because it's really a good way of, it's one of the nutrients that is not supported with food as easily. So those are the things that I, across the board, please do if you're cooped up in the house. Breathing exercises. You can still open up your windows and do breathing exercises. Breathing is so important because that's how the energy comes into us. You know, when we took our first breath, we got our vital force. And so opening up the chest is so important. So make sure your lungs are strong. Alternate nostril breathing in yoga is very good to balance the mind. It's a real challenging time.
Definitely. And people overlook the simple and free things, just like sitting and doing 5 minutes of breathing. It's one of the fastest and quickest ways to put the body into that rest and digest parasympathetic mode.
Yes, and bring back our energy.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You know, stillness,
yes.
To be still. Sometimes we have to shut the mind off. And so that's where meditation comes in, to just be in stillness. I have a very easy meditation for those people who don't meditate on a regular basis. It's a very simple technique to meditate. It just takes some time, you know, even if I tell my patients, even if you have 5 minutes, still your mind. You can't still your mind? Okay, use this technique. You close your eyes, you sit on the ground is most helpful. And you imagine a beautiful river coming in, beautiful river. And you can't hold on to the river because our mind is all over the place. Okay, look at the thought. And then you have a little boat over there but on the river, and take that thought and put it in the boat and let it go down and get back to looking at the river. The point is to take control of your mind.
And they say that the people who can't meditate or find it the hardest to meditate are often the people who need it the most. But it's like training other muscles at the gym. You can't expect to run a marathon just from working out once. So you can't expect yourself to sit in meditation in complete silence with zero thoughts. And that's not even the goal, is it, with meditation?
No, it isn't. It's taking control of your mind and being still for a change.
Mm-hmm. And I was one of those people who was very resistant to meditation because I'm quite type A and my mind's like always going. So it's been one of the biggest game changers for me personally. So if there's anyone out there listening who feels the same, just give it a try. And if that's like just sitting on the ground with your eyes closed isn't your form of meditation, it could be going out in nature, going for a walk, or hugging a tree. Yes. It still counts.
Yeah, it just takes the time to acknowledge. You know, here's another way. You have a beautiful plate of food in front of you. Bless the food. Connect with the food. That's nature. Our food, our plants are nature. Nature is everywhere. We are nature. And the most important message here is nature heals.
Correct, definitely. And you've mentioned throughout the episode about the importance of plants and organic and kind of a plant-based, not necessarily a vegan diet, but just having that as the center with local, organic, a rainbow of vegetables, maybe some kind of functional foods like the sea vegetables to help with the radiation and detox. Is there anything else? Obviously, the book goes into more details and kind of a 6-week plan to help with some of these things, but why is the focus so much on the liver? Is there anything else that you want to mention?
Yeah, because the liver is the factory. It's a factory. It's biggest detoxing. It's detoxing.
I think it's easier to say what the liver doesn't do.
It detox our toxins. It also detoxes our mental thoughts and our emotional thoughts. So being on a spiritual path, you want to make sure that your liver is clean, because the liver is really the seat of our will. It's the seat of our will. I see people when their liver is low, they have no will for life. You start cleansing the liver and all of a sudden, wow, I'm ready to live. And it's because it's not just a physical organ. It's a very esoteric organ. So if we're really looking on having a holistic life, we have to realize that what is health? Health is the balance of the mental, emotional, physical, etheric bodies, and they are integrated. And that's how we have balance. Now, once we're in balance with our mental, emotional, physical, etheric, it's easy to connect. It's easy to connect to the higher forces, because that's why we're here. We are here to know who we are and why we're here.
I think some people, and I've mentioned before in a different episode about the organ and emotion connection, a lot of the time people associate the liver with anger. Do you feel like that falls under it as well?
Yes, it does. Mm-hmm. That's why when we detox the liver, sometimes we get pretty angry. Sometimes we're very irritable and tell everybody off. Just say, sorry, I'm detoxing my liver. You know?
It's an excuse.
So, yeah. And we can detox our liver just with food. Change the food. So I have a liver cleansing diet that we use for the first 3 weeks. Is really strict. It's basically protein, fruits, and vegetables. And no fried. Don't heat your oils. Mm-hmm. You know, use your oil as the part of the healing. You know, use that wonderful olive oil to pour on your steamed vegetables after, maybe a little sprinkle of good sea salt. And it becomes so tasty that when you have something fried in deep oil, it doesn't taste as good anymore. So we're changing the taste buds. Then after 3 weeks, I let them have, or it's called the modified version. And you're allowed to have cooked whole grains with our legumes and the rest of the diet. So the diet consists of like maybe oatmeal with a few berries in the morning for breakfast, or the liver cleansing drink. I have 2 liver cleansing drinks. One's a green drink and one's a citrus drink. We can have that for a breakfast. And then we go to lunch. Make it vegetables. Whatever it is, make it vegetables, whether it's steamed vegetables, whether it's nice big salad. I'm careful about not eating too many salads in the middle of the winter. I think we need cooked food in the winter and more raw in the summer. So that's seasonal. But you want to include good protein with your vegetables, and again at dinner. So that's basically the diet. There's lots of menus, there's lots of choices, and start to love the food. Oh, I'm on this diet. Yuck. It's the way we heal is by loving what we're doing.
Food is medicine.
Food is medicine.
And could people expect to go through some sort of detox reaction during this? Is that a good sign, or is that a sign that you need to do something different?
You know, the baths help for the detox, number 1, because you're sweating in the bath. Number 2, the detoxing, it's a slow detox because it's over a period of 6 weeks. And just the change in diet alone will change things. If it doesn't, better take a look at parasites.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could be eating the most perfect diet, but if you've got a ton of parasites, you're going to still be inflamed. This diet
is giving you symptoms. There's more than just the liver going on here. Take a look at your bowels. Are your bowels moving? Okay, keep them moving. There's lots of good formulas over the counter on the market with herbs that will help until you realize what's going on. But if you have to keep taking laxatives, then there is a problem. There's a problem. There are so many reasons for the problem. I mean, these are the times when people ask me questions. Well, I have this symptom and I have this symptom. So,
like, how long have you got? Like 3 hours. We could keep going and talking about all of these things.
I actually enjoy it. I've been in practice for 40 years, and I don't see myself retiring anytime soon. My teacher,
No, we don't want you to.
my teacher practiced till she was 104.
Wow.
So I have about 30 plus years for that.
You can do it. You can go further than that. I'm sure of it.
I tried to write a book, to give all the tips that I have been using for all these years. So that I figured, oh, it's time for me to retire. Well, my God, it made things worse.
Yeah, they say that you need to keep your mind busy.
Oh,
but you also
okay.
deserve a rest, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, it's, my rest will be, I'm going to write something more,
Mm-hmm.
So.
I mean, when you're doing what you love, it often doesn't feel like work. So it will be adding to your life, not taking away.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're working now?
No, I'm having fun.
I don't feel like I'm working now. This is life.
Yeah.
This is why we're here. So to live.
Mm-hmm.
I don't separate work from pleasure. Whether I love to dance. So I'm either dancing or doing doctoring. Those are my two life threads.
Yeah, I feel like podcasting is one of my favorite parts of my job, and connecting with amazing practitioners like yourself.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you.
And I always end with a few questions for my guests, just so we can get to know you on a more personal level. So the first one is, what's one thing that you do daily to stay in hormonal harmony?
Okay, so when I think of hormones, I think of the endocrine system.
Mm-hmm.
So what I do daily is I do meditate.
Yeah. That's like the foundation
and
of your day.
And breathing. And in the shower, I say my prayers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I say Gayatri mantra every day, at least a few times a day when I start practice. I say the Lord's Prayer every day in the shower.
Mm-hmm.
And that balances who I am and why I'm here, and why I'm doing it.
That's perfect. What's your go-to breakfast if you're a breakfast person?
Oh boy, I love soft-boiled eggs. I have to tell you, I love soft-boiled eggs, but I don't eat them every day. But I do love it. If I'm going out, people, or is it gonna have 2 poached eggs on top of some asparagus, please, with some spinach? But I love my liver cleansing drinks for the morning, and I prefer to have something more lighter in the morning. Or I'll do oatmeal with berries, and I like to use a little cream on it, real cream. Because even though I'm pretty much dairy free, I use cream because cream is a fat. It's not a dairy. Yeah. So I like it better than milk. So great. I do that. Or muesli in the summer.
Mm-hmm. So you've got a few different options on rotation depending on the weather, your mood.
I rotate. Yeah. How I feel in the morning. Maybe I'll do a fresh squeezed juice in the morning. It's all up in air.
Yeah. You listen to your body and what your needs are that day.
I do, yeah.
And to summarize everything, I know we've covered like tons of different subjects today, but is there a piece of advice to summarize everything that we've covered, or just your message as a practitioner in general?
My message as being a practitioner is be honest with yourself. We know what's right or wrong, so be honest. Say, is that really going to serve me? Is that food going to serve me? Is what I'm doing going to serve me? Because first we have to love ourselves. We cannot love another person until we love ourselves. So loving ourselves, to me, is the most important part. That may sound selfish, but unless we love ourselves, we can't love another. And unless we see God in the other, we don't understand God at all.
Totally. And I say that even to my clients all the time. Even if I give them some recommendations for diet and tell them to increase certain foods, if they don't feel good eating them. If they maybe I tell them to remove something and they feel worse, it's about listening to your body. I just give them a guideline and kind of
Sure.
what I've seen to help previously, but it comes back to your unique body at the end of the day. And there's so much conflicting information out there these days that we just get overwhelmed and don't actually listen to what our body's telling us that we need.
Good advice. You are just beaming with ready to just implement so much.
It's passion and me being a bit of a nerd.
They work together.
Yes. And very last question for you is, where can people find more from you online? And I'm sure they're interested in grabbing your book after hearing our conversation today. So it's Harmonic Healing. Where can they pick up a copy?
Harmonic Healing is offered by Hay House, UK.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you can get the book there. If you look me up, Linda Lancaster, and there's lots of YouTubes out there that I've done with Hay House, actually, and others. I've done a lot of podcasts. You can look at my website, lightharmonics.com, and also Light Harmonics on Instagram, and Facebook, Light Harmonics Institute.
And I will link all of those in the show notes so people can get easy access to them. But I highly recommend the book. I said before we started recording, it's one of my favorite books, and I've read a ton in the health and nutrition world. I love how holistic and kind of old school your approach is in terms of get like the real naturopathic approach, because a lot of practitioners these days, again, they're very like specialized in certain areas and they're not taking into consideration the energetics and emotions and trauma and nature and all of those things. They're just very focused on the diet or just gut health. So I want to thank you personally for the work that you're doing. I really look up to you as an inspiration, and I want to thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing your wisdom with the listeners and myself today.
It's been my great pleasure. You know, I see light at the end of this tunnel. Just keep going on your lifestyle. Trust that nature will heal, and keep that electromagnetic energy in balance, so that our etheric force field, which is connected to the divine, that's where the connection is, in that energy field.
What a perfect way to wrap it up. Thank you so much, Dr. Linda.